Well, Robert, it's been a couple of weeks since the announcement that you will be taking over the track announcer job at Woodbine. What's life been like the last couple of weeks? It's got to be a whirlwind.
I've tried to keep it as stable as possible, staying very present, especially with my work at Emerald Downs. But I think in the last week, I've started to get a little more in touch with the fact that I'm moving out of Washington State. And I think a lot of the preparation for that carries a little bit more sentiment than I expected. So it's been a little tough, but I think I've been pretty aware, of Woodbine being in contact with me, and I think that's helpful. And I've been aware of the type of transition for Matt, and I think those things have made me focus better.
How do you balance the preparation for a new track while kind of trying to have as much of a graceful exit from your current track, Emerald Downs, as well as kind of reflecting on what's been an amazing career here?
Well, thank you. I think, though, it's really best at the moment to stay focused on where I am, which is to finish really in a very strong way at Emerald, because I'm still here, and I'm very happy to finish on such a high note. And I'm also really happy to be going to Woodbine with such support from Emerald Downs. But as far as a look into Woodbine, I've taken a sort of a look-see approach. I've been looking at some of the barns and some of the types of horses who might be running in the upcoming Queen's Plate trial, and just getting a sense of it. I haven't gone too deeply into learning horses, but I just feel I have to trust that the type of start that I had at Emerald and the types of starts I've had in other places, even though it's been a long time since I've shifted, even at Sunland, does just come by trusting oneself, and that is the hardest part, actually.
Well, maybe you could take us back to 1996 and your start at Emerald Downs, and tell us what was the mindset like of a younger Robert Geller, a Robert Geller who's coming to a track that had never started before. It had to be an exciting, but maybe even a nerve-wracking experience just to get going here in the United States.
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag because it was my first experience of North America. And the fact that there was such anticipation about the return of racing to Western Washington through Longacre's closure in '92, and then the 4 years that led to such revolutionary changes to be able to get Emerald Downs off the ground, and then to come after what had been a reign of Gary Henson and not know how I would be received as a race announcer. But I think more importantly was the sense of unity that this team had and the inclusion that I was received with. So we had a lot of great anticipation. We had great camaraderie. We had an incredible sense of potential. And I think that those things fueled us to a terrific start, even if there were technical issues, even if there were political issues, even if there were simulcast issues. And I mean, I know soon after we started that Ron, who was very, very clear in his vision of Emerald Downs, found there were lots of obstacles to keep Emerald Downs afloat because of the nature of the industry. It had changed a lot since the times of Longacres. So to be part of that, to be privy to all of the ongoing needs of a track and to be asked to do so many different roles, I think it was really interesting for me because I was thrown into something that was much bigger than just track announcing. And I'm very, very grateful for that because I think I've always been so involved in every sense of Emerald Downs. And I think it's a really rich experience in that way. So I think we've journeyed through some tough times, really tough. But the fact that we've survived them so well is testament to this community of racing.
Well, we know Emerald Downs and the community has changed quite a bit, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about how Robert Geller's changed. What's the difference between 1996 Robert Geller and 2015 Robert Geller?
Well, in '96, I didn't know a lot of people. I didn't know the history. I was not sure of my style, how it would all sit. And I think as you evolve, you start to get your own rhythm and you start to get your own types of ideas about what Emerald Downs represents to you. And the relationships is what's really made everything so incredibly deep, and it's like a tapestry of great experiences because as you get to know people and you journey with them over a longer period of time, they really get to know you and you get to know them. And so that is very special. I mean, just in TV, for example, you know, to work with people for so long and to, you know, all of our crazy habits that we have, people are exposed to and have to put up with you. And I think it's really quite fun. Emerald Downs is a really fun track. It's really youthful. And even though I've got older, I actually feel is just as fresh right now as when I started. The only difference was there were some years where I sort of thought, wow, I wish we could progress quicker. I wish we could get some of these things that we wanted in terms of prize purse and bigger fields and perhaps a little more opportunity to get more exposure. And I think we've really done very well, but those are just little frustrations. But more importantly is that sense of I have come to really, be so integral to it. It's very hard to leave, but I think with the support of knowing that Emerald Downs believes that, as I do, that this is an opportunity for me career-wise, I feel fine at leaving on such a high note.
Take us through some of the racing life that you've been able to call. Jockeys have a favorite ride, trainers have a favorite horse. What about a favorite race call? A call where maybe you thought the race really played out in a way where it was going to be memorable, or maybe even just a race call where you felt like you did justice for the race. You described it exactly how it could have been described, and even if you reach back into all your bag of tricks, you couldn't have done it any better.
I know. I don't know. I do know. I mean, it's so hard to pinpoint a race, but and you forget so many of these races, but there are times when, and one of the things I love about race calling for me, this is for me, is to read a race correctly. And so there is a couple of type of horses that have run at our track that they sit back and they might get caught in traffic. And I don't remember all their names, but I could pick them up even at the first turn and know they were going to win. That's how confident I was. Emma Bovary and horses like that were incredibly important to call because you just knew they had a ton of horse. I mean, Striker PhD was, recent, but, horses like West Seattle Boy, things that stick with me. Wassum and Clearly is such a fan favorite. Early days, Name for Norm, How They Fight Back, Ropers and Wranglers, Cocktails Anyone, and I think Skyjack's Winning the Mile. There are certain types of horses that have a move, and you watch for it, but I think the key for me on a race call is, did I sense what was going to happen early? And that, to me, is much more important than calling it in order or calling it nicely. It's so much about, did you capture the move? Going
through the racing, going through the relationships you've developed here at Emerald Downs, to the personal relationships you've developed with the fans and the horsemen here at Emerald Downs, what are you going to miss the most? What are you going to go, I'm going to Toronto and I'm not going to have this anymore? What is Robert Geller going to go back and look at and go, boy, I really cherish those moments? Yeah, I am sad as I leave, knowing that I am not continuing directly with the relationships I formed, but I think they're inside of me. I am sad about that because it takes years to build that. But on the other hand, I suppose that that's something that I will have to earn and build again. But I think it's the intimacy of this track. I don't think people understand how rich Emerald Downs is when they look at it on the screen in terms of what's behind it and the community that's behind it and the joy of a track like this, because it's very unique to have been an announcer at a track from day one that no one else has been at. So for me, it was like being given a clean slate. And to be able to put my own expression on that and to build those relationships, I will miss that, and I will also miss my home, but I'm not going to abandon my home. It's a place to come back to. But I will mostly miss people, of course. Well, I can tell you this, Emerald Downs will always be your racetrack, and you will always be considered the original voice of Emerald Downs. And I know I speak on behalf of everyone that it has been an absolute pleasure of you leading the charge here at Emerald Downs.
That's very sweet.